Good evening, everyone, and welcome to First Canada Alumni Corner. This is an exciting and informative series of virtual coffee chat style info sessions and workshops presented by accomplished First Robotics Canada alumni. This program is designed to empower current students as well as alumni with the knowledge, skills, and insights they need to succeed in their transition from being team members to being part of the incredible First Robotics Canada Alumni Network and succeed within it. I'm your host, Jaylene Kostelski, fellow First Canada alum and volunteer and alumni manager here at First Canada. As Canadians, it's important to recognize the land of which we are a part of. As we gather for this meeting, physically dispersed and virtually constructed, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place and, in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we celebrate today. We acknowledge the elders and youth, past and present and emerging, of all the land on which we work and live. We honor the ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. We acknowledge with this land of respect for the Indigenous nations who have cared for Turtle Island, also called North America. The Indigenous people have been gifted the role of caretakers of this land before the arrival of settler peoples until today. But most importantly, remember the history of these lands and people that have been tainted by poor treatment and a lack of friendship with the First Nations who called Canada home before it was given this name. The history is something that everyone is affected by. We are all treaty people in Canada. We all have a shared history to reflect on, and each of us is affected by this history in different ways. Our past defines our present, but if we move forward as friends and allies, it does not define our future. Today, our topic is securing internships and co-op opportunities during your academic journey. And we're going to be covering topics like understanding co-op internship programs, building a competitive resume, interview preparation and success, and of course, networking opportunities. So throughout the show, if anyone has any questions, post them in the chat. But let's get started. I would like to introduce our special guest for tonight, Celeste Nantel.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Should I just take it away? I've got slides.
Go for it.
All right, guys, I've got slides. Let me do the whole, can you see my screen bit? Can we see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Amazing. All right, let's talk about the chase, co-ops and internships. I was told 30 minutes to do this. We'll see whether or not it is 30 minutes, but I'm going to go through quickly because I've got a lot to say. First of all, why am I here talking about this? First of all the opinions are my own. They're not a reflection of my employer or First Canada. I'm just here to give my own opinions. Yes, I was a First alumni. Shout out Team 1360 Orbit Robotics in Oakville. I was also Dean's List finalist in 2017, so you know I was a busybody since the start. I got a degree in mechanical engineering at McGill University. That was from 2018 to 2023. I was able to do all of these co-ops because I started early. So I actually had a research internship at a lab after grade 12. It was at Sunnybrook Hospital or Sunnybrook Research in Toronto. They do hire high school students for research roles. So look into that and don't think that you can't get a technical summer job as a high school student. You most definitely can. And it is truly the chokehold strategy for getting internships throughout your university career. So I've had 5 different internships during university. 3 of them were at startups. One of them was at the startup that I co-founded, Acrylic Robotics. It still exists. You can go look it up. It's being led by my wonderful co-founder, Chloe Ryan, and we paint fine art using robotic arms. So pretty cool. Check it out. I started that in my second year in 2020. The pandemic started, and we were like, we've got nothing to lose, which is something I'm going to talk more about how university is a time to take risks because you are so well supported and you have so many like safety nets that you got to take this opportunity that's in front of you. I went to go work in the US for the first time in 2022 because I did this whole startup thing. I was a little bit late to the whole going to the US thing, but I was an intern at Tesla in the factory in Fremont. Incredible experience in the factory especially. And currently I'm full-time as a sales engineer at Samsara, and I'm based in the US and they got me a visa, thankfully. So we track vehicles and construction equipment and allow people in physical operations to be able to manage their fleets of assets more efficiently. That's who I am. Let's stop talking about me. Let's talk about you and why you should bother. Because obviously you want to enjoy your summer, but unfortunately the grind never stops. And this is necessary to get a job post-grad. If you don't do any internships and don't do any co-ops, you're just not going to be able to find a job when you graduate. And you think, oh, I'm in tech. Oh, I have a software degree. Everybody has that degree now. It doesn't make a difference. You gotta have experience before you graduate. And also, the competition isn't waiting for you. It's really the early bird gets the worm because I had a job after grade 12 and I got an internship after first year. In second year, I was interviewing for all these FANG companies and just way outside of the realm of everybody else at my university. And I mean, at McGill, it's not like Waterloo where the co-ops are such an integral part to it. And my like the students in my cohort at my school were struggling because they did not have a job. And me, I was applying for stuff I didn't imagine I could. So yeah, you got to get to it early or else you're going to suffer. Don't be that person who's suffering. It's so important also because it gives you context for university courses. In engineering, this is supposed to be applied sciences. It's not applied if you're not going into industry and actually using it. So things I learned in my co-ops, I definitely saw them come up later in my university courses. Even at my first job at the lab, it was a focused ultrasound lab, and I was doing like Fourier transforms and all that, which I had no idea what that meant after grade 12. And it wasn't until my fourth and fifth year of university that I was actually using that. And I already knew what it was used for, in a research setting. Also, academia is not going to save you. I know you can think, oh, I'm going to do research and then I'm going to go do a master's and then maybe I'll go do a PhD. But at some point, you're going to have to like get out of that and go get a job. And you're just pushing off the inevitable of getting a job. You can still decide to pursue that academia pathway, but having some industry experience in your back pocket is just so invaluable. Um, Honestly, one of my hot takes is that it's better to extend your degree if you want to do a semester abroad than using one of your summers to travel, um, because it's like wasting a co-op slot. So let's imagine you had an internship in second year, great. After third year, you're like, I want to go backpack around Europe. I get you, but you're going to be in fourth year trying to get an internship after fourth year or your full-time job. And the only thing you have is that second year internship, which is not at all at the same level of difficulty as the ones you're applying for. You're going to screw yourself over. Just extend your degree if you really want to go abroad, but do not like sacrifice a slot to get an internship. And I'd say most importantly, you have to leave the university bubble to figure out your purpose. The whole I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up thing, you're not going to figure that out in university. You're going to figure that out in the industry actually trying stuff. Um, yeah, so you should care. Let's get into the meat and potatoes immediately, which is the resume. And I don't do cover letters. I think they're a waste of time. I think you're applying to way too many jobs at this point for it to make sense that you're writing a cover letter. And let's be honest, the AI, let alone HR, is going to read that. So they're just not gonna. Okay, my most important thing, and I would be beefing with people in university when I had this hot take, but eventually I got them to come around. It's got to be one page. And you might think, oh, but I was so involved in high school. I did so many things. I can tell you, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares about anything you did in high school other than first. Nobody cares. Take all that out. It's just going to make the recruiter roll their eyes when they get to that part of your resume. And it should be one page. It's okay to have white space. We can see on the right-hand side, I've got a progression of resumes from the one I started with. The one in the middle actually was a first alumni who was working at Facebook at the time. He helped me build this one. So definitely reach out to people that you know in the first community that are older. They know what they're doing. They can help a lot. But even with this middle one, there's so many things that I don't like about it. There's too many different fonts. There's too many different variations of colors, too many different changes of italics or bold. You don't want that. And then finally, my last resume, this is actually page 1 of 2 pages, but I earned the right to have 2 pages because I did all these internships and then I graduated. But before I graduated, no, did not have a right to have a 2-page resume. And also, just for an internship or a co-op role, no one's going to read that far along. The volume of applicants is too high. So yeah, don't cram. I can see my middle one looks so crammed. Don't be like that. You want a lot of white space, like relaxes the eye, and then the eye can more easily find the information that matters. Don't put any graphics. Don't put any color blocks. Like you might want to go in on Word and choose one of their resume templates. Don't do that. Start with a blank page. And no headshot. I know like sometimes in Europe that's a thing, not at all a thing. In North America would be embarrassing. Don't do that. Put your name, let's go top to bottom. So you're going to start with your name, your school email, not your personal email. It looks much more professional to use your school email. Your education, later in your career, you will want to put that later on because it's not as relevant. But because this is a co-op, the number one requirement is going to be what your degree is. So you want that right at the beginning. And then your experience, and that'll be your other jobs and co-ops. That can also be a design team at your school if you're doing like Formula E or any of the car design teams, underwater autonomous vehicles, any of that stuff. That can go in experience. And I also put first in there as well. Probably later in my life, I'll take it out. But it's still like I got my job at Tesla because of things I did in grade 12 on Team 1360. And that was 4 or 5 years later. So, it still matters. It still can get you the job. And then skills all the way at the end. I wouldn't put them before the experience because the skills just kind of sums up everything that was like the important parts of the experience. And each bullet point should follow this specific order. And this was some great advice that I got from a first alumni when I was redoing my resume. So you want to start the sentence with what was achieved, what was actually done. And this is from your actions. And if you have metrics, that's even better. And then you want to go with why it matters. And that's like, why does it matter to the company? And then the last thing you want to say is how you do it. So what skills were used and what like tech stack was used. You don't want to do it the other way around. Always start with what was achieved first. I've got more about this.
Celeste, I do want to just add one point. For school email, if you're in high school and you have a school email, use one that you're going to have access to after high school. School email for university, you tend to have access to. Obviously, if you're in school, you'll have access to it. But just a note there, if you have a school specific email while you're in high school, please use one that you can still access after you've graduated so that you still have a way of communicating. If that means that you need to create a more professional email, this is a great time to do that. I know that we all have that transition from the one you make when you're like 10 to the one you make when you're like 18. You're like, okay, it needs to say my name or something to make sure it's professional. I've also heard tips if you are using a personal one for that piece, try not to use numbers. It does look a little bit less professional. So try to figure out some combination of your letters of your name or something like that. And your first experience, especially if you're applying to a job that is a sponsor or partner, or even you might be applying and the person reading your resume is a fellow first alum, that's going to be an automatic connection point. Another tip here is, and I don't know if you're going to talk about this later here, Celeste, but having that on your LinkedIn, for example, is a great way that it doesn't have to live on your resume if it doesn't fit. Although that connection, we know it's a community that we all feel very much a part of. But having it on your LinkedIn doesn't take up any extra space because it can be as long as you want. And people see that logo and they instantly understand the challenges that you went through on your team, whether you were FLL, FTC, or FRC. So a great way to make that connection and a great place to connect with fellow first alum. As Celeste, you were saying that you connected with the first alum to create your resume and reiterate and grow together. So just a couple notes there.
No, those were great call outs. I'm gonna try to go through them in some sort of order. Yes, don't put your high school email. I forgot about that
All
entirely.
good.
Um, I'd say like first name dot last name at gmail.com. That's fine. I actually have a custom domain. They're not expensive. They can be $10. So my email is like my first name at my first name last name.com. And I just feel like such a pro having that.
Mhm.
Oh, I was like 21 years old, did not need to have that. It just made me, I felt like I brought a certain level of professionalism. So if you feel like doing that, I also got it because I wanted to do a portfolio website and I wanted to
Mhm.
learn how to build that in React. It never ended up happening because I started the startup after, so the whole looking for jobs went on the back burner. But it is something to look into, especially if you're learning web dev. A first thing to do is your portfolio website. That is a great idea.
Mhm.
Um, the yes, LinkedIn. I don't talk a whole lot on about LinkedIn on this because I was trying to like keep it somewhat short, but
Yeah.
100% have it on your LinkedIn. 100% having the logo is great. And actually the first alumni who helped me with this, it was someone I knew through volunteering with First. So that's also a great way to meet people that are older First alumni that are at other jobs is volunteer at your district events, do field reset. It's fun and made so many connections. I guess, and my other thing is definitely put first on your resume. There's no way you don't have space at. There's no way you don't have space.
Yeah.
And multiple times I've had recruiters, or not really recruiters, but doing when I'm doing the first round of interviews and there's a member of the team, they'll be like, "Oh, I did first," and automatic connection with that person. So it's such a good in. And you're not just one of the many faces they're seeing, you're the first alumni. So
Mhm.
huge.
They're gonna remember that. Yeah.
Reduce the words, take out the that's, take out the thes, make it like on one line if possible. Like, what do I have over here? Yeah, I mean, some of the mine are a little long, but if you see in my middle resume where I was really trying to cram, everything is one line long. And there should be no that's or thes. Um, so yeah, because you just want it to fit and you want it to be the easiest thing for somebody to skim or for an AI to go skim. Speaking of AI, I know that people say tailor your resume to the job, and it's so much work because you're applying to so many jobs, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to deal with that. Um, but if it's a job that you really want and you're looking at the job posting, use keywords in your resume that are in the job posting because they're going to
Mhm.
run this through an AI regardless, and the AI is going to go and look for all of those little words. So that's kind of a way to get ahead is use the same verbiage that the posting is using. Student government stuff, like in I'd say in university, like if you're in your engineering undergraduate society, I think that also counts to go on your resume. I wouldn't put in the experience, but you could do like involvement. But most importantly, you want to show that you can ship. You can actually get stuff done, not just sit on a council. So, use it wisely. And it does show that it's well-rounded. There will be companies that are like, we want well-rounded individuals. And seeing that you do student government is a good way to do that. Obviously, if you're looking for a job and you want a technical job, prioritize being on a design team over doing student government. But if you're doing it anyway, put it on your resume. Um, which is specify what you did, not just the impact of the team. That doesn't help anybody. You want to specify what you did. And I'd say the most important thing is to work on your personal and side projects. A super low-hanging fruit is 3D printing. Like I learned to 3D print by buying one during the pandemic for my startup. And I ended up working at the 3D printing lab, doing 3D printing for students at school. That was super helpful. It was like a good transition. And I started that all by myself. Like I didn't need a job or anything. And you can get 3D printers for like $300 Canadian. I'd say it's worth the investment, given how you can, like, your CADing skills get better. You know how to troubleshoot a 3D printer. These are all skills that are going to go on your resume. And yeah, student design teams, that's probably the most valuable thing you can do for your resume or design teams. I didn't even do anything. I didn't do any of those. So like I'm not one to talk, but I know that if I were to do this all again better, I would be in design teams. And yeah, all this to say your class projects alone aren't enough. And I've been on the other side of it too, posting job postings on Waterloo Works and seeing all of the applicants come in. You all do the same projects at school, which is like, okay, at Waterloo, you do have an advantage because you're doing all of these like hands-on projects at school that a lot of the other schools don't do. McGill's more of a theoretical engineering school compared to Waterloo, but I know you're all doing the same projects. I see all your resumes, your portfolios coming in. They all look the same. So you want something more than that. And most importantly, don't list something you can't answer questions about. They're going to ask questions and you don't want to flub because then you look like a faker, you look like a poser. You don't want to do that. Cool. Networking. It's so easy to waste time, but it's also so easy to get a job if you do it right. I'd say the first steps, like casual first steps, would be to connect with friends, classmates, and alumni that work at your goal companies. And I know you're going to think, oh, but I have no idea where I want to work. Like I'm just starting out. Take it 1 year at a time. Think like, where would I like to work this year? I want to work at these companies. I want to work in this industry. And then go and find people that have worked there. And that's where LinkedIn is your best friend because you can see who's been at your school and who's worked there. And also your school department's career advisor, so like the engineering career center, whatever that is, can connect you with alumni and previous intern connections. I would take things from a career advisor with a grain of salt because if they really knew how to get a career in tech, they would not be a career advisor. But at the same time, they know all the people that have done everything, so they can connect you. It depends on the school. I feel like at McGill, not that many people went to the US. So when I came and was like, what do I do to go to the US? They didn't really have anything for that, but they did connect me with somebody who gave me my first referral to Tesla. So that was also huge. So, take what works for you. Start 2 semesters ahead. I know you're like, oh my gosh, it never ends. I'm sorry, it never ends. Like that's the only way to win is you have to always keep working. And you're going to be wanting to do a lot of coffee chats to get these referrals and find out ahead of time whether you would like a job or not. You can dodge a bullet so easily just by having a coffee chat with someone and being like, oh, that's actually what the job is like. That's not what I want. Instead of wasting a whole year on that. So spread them out and do a lot of them. And you're just going to ask about their role. You're going to ask about their day to day, ask what's a good fit, like how would someone succeed in this role? What are they looking for? And what's the interview process in that role? And if you have a good conversation and they vibe with you, they think you would be a good fit, they will probably offer you a referral. They especially can do this because they can make money. Not necessarily for an intern, though. When I wrote this in, I forgot that. But even if you're going for your first full-time role, it is something to consider. And usually they only make the money if they refer you before you apply. So just be careful about that that if you're doing a coffee chat with someone about a particular role, don't apply until after the coffee chat, after you know if you're going to get the referral. Job fairs, they're a gamble. Like they can be a waste of time. They're so overwhelming. But if you plan ahead, it can be huge. Especially if you can't find anybody in your network and you can't find anybody through your career advisor who works at the company you want to work at, you can go get your FaceTime with those reps at the job fair. But you have to be prepared. You have to research the company, you have to have questions ready, and you got to get there early because if not, you're going to be, the 20th person in line to talk to some Google software engineer. And by then, that Google software engineer has already capped out on the number of people they can remember. And a tip is if you volunteer to help organize and run this job fair at your school or like the engineering job fair, you get there early, you get extra face time with the reps. They can actually know and remember your name because you're the first face they saw in the morning there. So that is a way to sneak in and get extra time. Okay, yeah, another thing, add recruiters on LinkedIn from your goal companies. This was huge for when I was applying to Tesla. I just, connected with a Tesla recruiter, and that recruiter was posting about info sessions and like webinars for the different roles. And I'd already missed some at the roles that I thought were better suited for me, some prototyping role. I'd already missed that webinar, but I was like, okay, I'll just go to whatever's the next one, which was powertrain. And I was like, all right. I went, I listened, and then they put a QR code up, and it was to apply early for roles that were not even public yet. So I
Mm.
got the offer before anybody else even saw the job existed. Like I cannot communicate enough how important that is. And it's just so good to have a job before the new year because then everybody else is stressing in the winter semester and you're just chilling. So definitely follow those recruiters on LinkedIn, get even notifications for info sessions because that's like huge.
Yeah, I believe, just gonna add from my Waterloo perspective, I believe, and I'm not sure if they still do this, but they would do info sessions in person on campus, and you would be able to go. Sometimes there was even free food, so that was nice. But they would talk about the company and the co-op opportunities that were coming up. So those opportunities in person as well as the LinkedIn info sessions and the webinars, like the combination of all of those is where you're going to find that sweet spot.
For sure, yeah. I mean, at my school, we didn't have everybody was going to work at like Bombardier and like all these aerospace Quebec
Yeah.
companies. Um, but yeah, I'm probably missing a whole lot of like Waterloo info just because I did not go. Um, but yeah, keep your ears perked for that type of stuff. And also, like, people hate hearing this, but sometimes you got to reach out to engineers directly instead of HR. HR is not in your best interest. They're not going to like try to help you get the role. It doesn't matter how qualified you are. That's just not their priorities. But people in engineering teams are trying to get people that are good. They're trying to get people that are skilled and that have that like chutzpah of going out and getting the job. And, I know you're like, oh, but it's cringe. What if I'm annoying them? Worst case, they don't answer. And if you need to apply, if you need to reach out to them again, it can be 3 years down the line. They're not going to remember how they ghosted your cold outreach. You got to be not afraid to cold call to actually get anywhere. And okay, after all this, like kind of to flip it around, you're assessing them as much as they're assessing you. So be selective with how you're spending your time. Don't go on coffee chats for companies and roles that you already know you're not going to like. It's just a waste of time. It's the same thing with applying. Like you just want to, oh, I want to apply to as many things as possible. You're just not like respecting your time by doing that. So be selective. Speaking of applications, I feel like it can be summed up with the FRC shooter styles of spray and pray or sniper. I've definitely been in the spray and pray like camp, like no judgment. But I'd say in the fall semester, you're in sniper mode. In the winter semester, if you don't have anything yet, you're in spray and pray. Um, for large companies, there's usually 2 or 3 rounds of job postings for the same roles. So the first ones will come out in September and then they'll close at the end of September or the end of October. The next ones will be in December. And then the final ones are in February. You do not want to be those people applying in February. Like it is the bottom of the bucket, bottom of the barrel jobs. Be on the September track. And I know you're like, oh, but I just got off work. I'm sorry. This is just the way it is. The off season, if you do a fall internship or winter internship, I know at Waterloo you don't get a choice, you just get whatever you get. But at other schools where normally you'd only do the summer, if you really want a shot at a more competitive company or role you think that you wouldn't get or you've tried and haven't gotten, rearrange your course schedule a little bit and you have a much higher chance of getting it in the fall or in the winter. Get referrals, That's a huge thing. Get referrals before applying. Also, just like plan ahead of time. That's one of the problems with spray and pray is that you don't really consider the referrals. And some jobs, like some companies like Google or Facebook, you only get 3 applications every 6 months or something like that. So don't screw it up by like applying to stuff that isn't exactly your role. And that if you could get a referral and you didn't get a referral, like you flubbed it. Where to find a job. I know there's like Indeed and all that. Don't waste your time. I mean, maybe if you're in the spray and pray stage, you can, but I would stick to LinkedIn. Um, Definitely take advantage of the LinkedIn Easy Apply. I love that. I used to only apply to stuff on Easy Apply because I could not be bothered to go to another company's website and fill out, okay, no, upload my resume and then fill out everything from my resume in the individual boxes.
Yeah.
Not respectful of my own time. But there's also some other ones that I think have some great co-op opportunities. This one called Well Found, which used to be called Angel List, if some of you are familiar with that, specifically startups. And I think do not, miss on the opportunities to work at startups, especially when you're earlier in your career or you're not really sure what you want to do. I think everybody should work at least one startup during their university experience because you learn a lot. You really learn how to get stuff done and you get more of a larger view of what happens to make a company work than just your blinders. You're just, oh, okay, I'm gonna make the bubble on Facebook Messenger look slightly different, versus launching a company's first product. Like it's just a really different experience. So definitely check out Well Found. Um, Obviously, startups might not be able to get you a visa, so look for local ones in Canada. They also might not be able to fund relocation. So ones that are near you can be better. And also Untapped, it used to be called Jumpstart. They have a bunch of co-ops at large startups. Or larger startups, I want to say. So that's also good and it's easy to apply. And they also have like community events and info sessions through there. I once applied to a job through Jumpstart for Zipline. I know they're a bigger name now, but when I applied, they were tiny. And it was an electrical engineering role. And I applied and they were like, hi, you're not an electrical engineer. And I was like, yeah, I know. And they're like, but I'm a first alum, so I know that you're good. And I was like, yes. And so they referred me to a non-public role. This is what I'm telling you guys. Like sometimes you got to shoot because you can get access to these non-public roles. And then that was a mechanical engineering job. I flubbed the technical interview, and we're going to talk about that later. But, it was a great experience anyway. Also check out like research lab job boards. If you have particular professors that you like their research or you like their field, ask them if they have any roles in their lab. And also your own university probably has a startup center, startup network, and they probably have a job board. And they also have some people that work at the startup network that know everything that's going on. And if you're like, I'm looking for a job like this, they might know in the back of their head that there's a certain startup, or even if the students that are the founders have since graduated, they're going to know about it. So those are a great resource. The people that work at the university startup center. Track everything in a spreadsheet. I know it's so annoying when you're doing spray and pray, but that's why you've got to start like in the sniper approach. And then you can keep track of, okay, I have a phone screen for this one. I'm in the second round for this one. And you can just see it all at once instead of it getting lost in your inbox. And it can give you some perspective so you don't start getting desperate because you can be like, no, 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 I've got at least 3 roles I'm interviewing at. I do not need to jump on the first one that gives me an offer. And also annoying, but very worth it is saving a copy of the job posting, like copy paste it into a Google Doc, because they're going to take that posting down when they start interviewing people, and you're not going to know anything about the role. You've applied to like 200 roles. You don't remember. And so definitely having that handy is huge. Um,
I'm just gonna add, I only know the Waterloo Works world, or it was previously known as something else, but if you are at a school that has a job board similar to a Waterloo Works, where that's like the main source to find different co-op jobs, still, Celeste's advice on like tracking everything and the spray and pray of like 200 applications going out in a couple days, and then you totally forget what jobs you applied for. So even if you are on a platform like that, this stuff can be very, very helpful for you as you go into those interviews, because you might get like 5 interviews or 10 interviews and you're going to get lost within all of them of what that job actually was. So super helpful.
For sure. I'm getting to the end, guys. I know I'm going on long, but also, especially for my girlies out there who want to be perfect, cut that out. If you meet 50% of the qualifications, apply. Like the qualifications list is a wish list. It's not requirements. Um, and I think hitting 50% of the qualifications, that's pretty good. Like even when you're in university. And you're never gonna know if you don't apply. And also, they can refer you to a better suited role, like what happened to me at Zipline. I knew I didn't like qualify for this electrical engineering role, but I was like it's close enough. So I submitted it anyway. And yeah, like only apply if you would take the job, if you got the offer, because you got to have some self-respect for your own time.
Mhm.
Interviews, don't choke. But also, you're going to get a lot of at-bats at this. It's not a big deal. You're going to choke at some point. Usually how it works is you have a phone screen with a recruiter. They're going to ask about your experience. They're going to half understand what you're saying. And then they're going to ask you why you want the job and you want to sound convincing. Your next, if you get past that, you pass the vibe check with the recruiter. You're going to do the same thing, but with usually people on the team or the manager. They're really gonna poke to make sure that you know everything on your resume really well. And then there is probably, if it's a technical role, there's probably going to be a technical interview or a take-home project or a coding exam. Um, Speaking from a mechanical engineering perspective, they like to do engineering brain teasers or stuff that you would see as conceptual questions at the beginning or the end of an exam. So I mean, it could be useful to keep track of your old finals. Look at what conceptual questions were on there. When I interviewed at Facebook in second year, and I was definitely too young for whatever role I was on, because they kept asking me questions that I hadn't done the classes for, but that shouldn't have mattered because it's like
Yeah.
I should have known the theory just by gut feeling anyway. So, don't psych yourself out. You can do this if you take a deep breath and think. Um,
Yeah, usually they're trying to see how you think, how your brain is going to process a problem, because you're not, even in your job, you're not going to always, I'll tell you this for sure, you're not going to know the answer a lot of the time. And it's how you figure it out. And that's what they're hiring you to do. So, regardless of what industry you're in or whatever, they're trying to just see exactly that, how your brain is going to process the information that it has and try to come up with an answer. Um, Not for everything, like a coding exam, they want to make sure that you can actually code, but for some of those other brain teasers and stuff, that's where they're going. So yeah, definitely take the stab and see where you can get, because it might just be exactly what they wanted to see your brain do.
For sure. And like even for coding exam, if you're doing like a whiteboard coding exam, pseudocode's perfectly fine. They just want to see that you get like how the structures and systems work, how you would write stuff out. Um, yeah, I'm gonna get a little bit back to this on the second page of this, I think.
Okay.
Uh, Things to prepare before the interview. It's not just knowing yourself. It's not just being a good engineer. You got to research what is this company's recent projects. Look them up on Google News. What have they been in the news for recently? Know their business, not just their tech. Anybody can know the tech, but really how you can stand out is by having the context and being more than just an engineer. You want to create shareholder value at the end of the day, not just be the biggest nerd of the bunch. Um, But speaking of being the biggest nerd, you should read their engineering blog. This was super helpful for me when I was preparing for my current job. Like what's their tech stack and also how do they make decisions on their engineering team? They're usually going to talk about that in the blog. Prep notes ahead of time of things that you think are going to be relevant for the interview. You might not even look at your notes, but it's the making of the notes that is the prep. Have your resume visible just because sometimes you can forget that you did anything. And definitely have pen and paper right there because you might have to do a free body diagram. Like you don't know what they're gonna throw at you. I had a question once that was about like a helicopter and the top is spinning this way and the wind is going this way. What way do they? It was all free body diagram, but I was out here like trying to do it in my head, which was so dumb. Don't be like me, have pen and paper, and don't be afraid to do a free body diagram. Um, Convey how hard you work. Convey that you contribute significantly to a project scope. People can be in the right place at the right time. That doesn't mean that they contribute a lot. That doesn't mean that they deserve the job. So you want to convince them that you were not in like all your experience, all the things on your resume. That wasn't just by chance. Like you actually earned that. You actually contributed. Um, because like in theory, one could fake their way through a lot of stuff. So you want to make it very clear that you are not faking your way through and that you contributed a lot. Um, and yeah, like we were talking about before, break down your technical questions to fundamentals, list what equations you're thinking about, what concepts you're thinking about. And I mean, at the end of the day, guys, act like you're excited for the role. Like, I know it's the middle of winter, you have midterms going on. Life is, hellscape sometimes, but you have to lock in during the interview. Act like you're a happy person. Just fake it till you make it. And please brush your hair. Like, I shouldn't have to say that, but I've done interviews for interns, and you guys don't brush your hair enough. Okay, this is like my second to last slide. We're getting there, guys. Considerations. Shoot for the moon and fall into the stars. And this is kind of like an adaptation of one of Karthik's great sayings from his presentation that he does yearly. I don't know if he still does. Um, which is shoot for perfection. Inevitably, you will fail, but you will fall into excellence. And so that's the case for here too. You want to be fighting above your weight class. Like I had no right in second year to be applying to all these FANG companies, and yet I got interviews. Like you can't get there unless you try and you believe that you can um fake it till you make it, a little bit. And that's the only way to get there is by shooting above where you currently are. And yeah, some like hot takes, working in the US, it has higher pay. The company headquarters are going to be in the US, so you're going to see more things. The first string of operations is going to be in the US. I would consider going to the US at least once during your time. I know this is like normal for Waterloo kids, but at your non-Waterloo schools, like just because no one else is doing it doesn't mean that you do not need to do it. You, like definitely do it. And also just in a larger sense, there's more opportunity in the US than in Canada. There's a lower cost of living. Other than California, there's a lower cost of living. And the housing's actually affordable down here. Like you could actually afford a house to buy a house. Not really a case in Canada. I know that's like long-term thinking, but you are going to have to think long-term. And so you should get some experience in the US so you have the option to always take on that path. Why is it so hard to do things in Canada? From a startup perspective, raising capital in Canada is really hard. Scaling is really hard. And there's not a huge business in Canada. There's not that many people. There's not that many dollars going around, and the dollar's not worth a lot. So, this is me being for real. Like, we're right next to the largest economy in the world. Like, do not lose sight of that opportunity that was offered to you. Also, consider, are they going to give you a relocation stipend? Are they going to give you housing? You want to be able to afford to do this. Like if you're taking a job in California and at hardware companies, at startups, in manufacturing, especially, you're not going to get paid those cushy California salaries. You do not want to go into debt because you took a job that you can't afford. So consider all the things that are part of it. But also, it's not all about the money. Like, go for whatever is the largest growth opportunity for you. If you're going between getting a FANG job where you're going to tweak how a message bubble looks versus being one of the like founding engineers at a startup, take the startup. You're going to learn so much more, and it's just 4 or 8 months or however long it is. It's just your undergrad. You're not risking that much, but the real risk is not taking the risk. Like that's really where you can miss out. Speaking of risks, being a student is a great time to take risks. People want to help you. Start a project, join a startup, start a design team. You can just do that. And found a startup. You most definitely can just do that. There's so many programs for university students, and they will give you money. They will give you guidance. They'll give you mentors. They're going to try to throw as much as they can at you. As soon as you graduate, nobody cares about your dreams anymore. But in university, they want to make it happen. And like to get it down to brass tacks, as soon as you graduate, you have to buy the materials yourself. In university, you can get a stipend from your school. You can get $5,000 just to like try something out over a summer. Definitely take the opportunity because once you graduate, doors close once you graduate. And I mean, my takeaways for you guys are believe in yourself. And it's not supposed to be a straight line whatsoever. Just because you did a certain type of job last summer does not mean you have to do the same type of job this summer. I feel like also, especially if you take like a consulting role early on, because it's not as technical, it can be a great in to get your first job. Do not do that all the way. Like find a technical job too, and then you can compare which one you want to do. But like, do not let yourself get locked into one type of industry or one type of engineering when this is the only time when you're like getting paid to try stuff out. Um, and also, yeah, know your value. Like you're an engineering student, you're studying tech in some capacity, you're getting hands-on skills, you're a first alumni that's super valuable, but also acknowledge your ignorance. Like you also know nothing, and everybody's gonna look at you like you know nothing, and that's okay. You have to be like humbly looking to seek knowledge, but also having the confidence that you can actually like take in that knowledge. So, balance those two. That's all my
That was
slides.
amazing, Celeste. Thank you so much. I'm so happy you ended with believe in yourself because as you were going through this, I was thinking back to when I was in this process and how I didn't believe that I could go for these jobs and stuff. And everyone that's watching this, you're either a first student or a first alum. So you have accomplished great things already. You are a problem solver. You're going to be able to figure this out. Take the confidence that you had on your team and bring it into this part of your life. It's going to give you so much value when you were talking to those judges, it's very similar to what you're how you're talking about yourself in an interview. If you had the honor of being a Dean's List nominee or recipient in some capacity, take that experience and bring it right back into your interview with different jobs. And like Celeste said, like you said, the try different things. Like for myself, trying different things as my co-ops allowed me to realize that I wasn't in the right program for myself. And I completely transitioned from engineering to science and business at Waterloo. And that allowed me to figure out my path. And now I'm here. And I'm so happy with where I'm at. And what I learned while I was in university is nobody's, like you said, it's not a straight line. There are so many people either changing programs or changing directions in the program if they're specializing in different areas that they didn't think that they would start at when they started in first year. So take as many risks and chances as you possibly can with a little bit of safety, like make sure you're good and whatever, but try different things and see where it goes. Try different design teams. All those experiences add up over time and it's the time to just figure out a little bit more of that who you are kind of thing. But even so, you're going to figure that even more after you graduate. So it's a whole journey. This is just one step, and it's the opportunity where you get to navigate all of that in a safe space. You have somewhere to fall back on. You have your school, and you have that community that's always going to be there for you.
Yeah. Like it actually reminds me of something I saw recently. There was someone in my year at school who started in bio, just bio, and then moved into engineering after first year because met a bunch of engineers and thought it was pretty cool, which is a huge risk and also very difficult to do. So great on her for doing that. And since she's started a company in university, and I found out this week that she won like best digital product at CES this year.
Wow.
So like, you know,
You
like
never know.
everything is within your grasp if you go for
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, and we talk a lot, if you haven't watched for those watching, if you haven't watched our episode on navigating the transition from high school to post-secondary, we talk a lot about this and the taking of risks and figuring out who you are and being able to be different than who you were in high school and having the space to do that. And this is kind of where you can break out of that. For a lot of us, we've lived in the same place for 18 years and with the same group of people, and all of a sudden there's so much more going on around you. So if that topic interests you, feel free to check out that episode. We had Marie and Karthik on that one. Is really good. So lots of overlap in a lot of these topics. Celeste, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was great. I do have a couple news updates for all of our audience. So number one, it is right now, if you're watching this fairly soon after we post it, it is FRC season is about to kick off for our competitions. We have a couple more FTC events as well. So check out our volunteer webpage, firstroboticscanada.org/volunteer, and you can sign up for our newsletter. We'll share all our volunteer opportunities. A couple alumni specific dates coming up at FRC Provincials. We will have Alumni Alley coming back. So this is where we celebrate all of our alumni in different capacities, so that whether they've had really cool capstone projects at the end of their studies, started businesses, work at a really cool company, whatever it might be, we're celebrating them in an exhibit style showcase. So you'll be able to check that out there. That'll be on the Friday, which is April 4th. We also are bringing back our alumni celebration, rebranded. It's going to be so much fun. It'll be Thursday, April 3rd at 6 p.m. or whenever qualification matches end, we'll start that up. And it's going to be a lot of fun this year. It'll be in the ballroom, a little bit more upscale. We'll have lights and all the good stuff. Throwback photos. Feel free to share those too, because who doesn't want to see all our amazing volunteers when they were on their teams? It's pretty funny. It gets a good laugh. And just a couple of reminders about, if you are watching this live or tomorrow, scholarships, a lot of them are due January 31st. So make sure you go to firstroboticscanada.org/scholarships to apply there. And if you want to hear about Alumni Corner or any other alumni things, feel free to sign up for our newsletter, firstroboticscanada.org/alumni. That's all my announcements. Celeste, anything else?
No,
Awesome.
go out there, get those jobs.
Yes, get those jobs. Thank you so much for you joining us today, and it was great to have everyone here tonight and watching the recording as well, and sharing your tips with our alumni community. So thank you so much, and have a good night, everyone. We'll see you in a bit.